presentation of my master student, Joel Liman. So here we have Dr. Omid Hoja from Agdeniz University and as an external jury member, and Dr. Shahram from Antalya Bilim University as an internal jury member, and me as a thesis advisor for Joel Liman. So before we get started, let me just briefly introduce Joel. Joel, he has joined Antalya Bilim University in 2018 after finishing his BS from Middle East Technical University, and he started working on his thesis from the first year of joining his master studies. So he worked on several topics, including drones, designing fast response drone communication systems, optimizing the locations of the drones in the air in a smart city. He worked also in designing novel non-orthogonal transmission systems for multi-user communication scenarios where he can ensure the security and reliability and efficiency of the system. Aside from this, he also worked on some other topics. He couldn't include them in the thesis as well because of the limitation and other constraints. Like he worked on using deep learning for channel prediction. He also worked on wireless bioresonance for health scenarios, especially for combating COVID-19, and some other works. So out of these works that he has been working on, he was able to produce really some good publications where he was able to publish maybe 4 conference papers, 2 book chapters, and maybe more than 5 articles, 5 journal papers. So these are the things that Joel have been doing, and today he's gonna explain to us in details what he has done in his thesis, especially the parts related to drones and novel non-orthogonal transmission schemes. So having introduced you, Joel, I can hand off the mic to you now, and you can get started and show us what you have done. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Professor, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. As you've been told, my name is Joel Konchale Mayan. And I would like to once again welcome you and thank you again for attending my thesis defense. And I'll be talking about a UAV-based smart rescue system utilizing a novel wireless communication technique with enhanced security against internal and external attacks. So the outline of today's presentation will be is actually divided into 3 main sections, or rather 4 sections. In the first part, I will talk about the Auto-FRD system model, where I will basically talk about current and future drone applications. I will also talk about the motivation behind the reason why I came up with this particular model. Also, we will briefly discuss about the system model. In the second part, we will look at the secure communication technique designed for this particular drone technology. There, I'll give you a brief introduction, background information of this communication technique, as well as the novelty of that particular communication system. And in the third part, we will talk about an optimal placement technology using meta-heuristic algorithm, basically using genetic algorithm and simulated annealing to further reduce the cost of implementing this particular system. And then finally, we will conclude with the conclusion. So drone technology have become very popular in the recent past, especially. It has been utilized in areas such as surveillance, photography, and filmmaking. It specifically has revolutionized this area of photography and filmmaking. Also, drones have been used in tracking. For instance, in national parks, they have been used to track animals, especially the endangered species, so that they be able to know exactly where they are at all times. They've also been used, drones have also been utilized in goods delivery, including medicine. Amazon is one of the biggest investors to invest in these goods delivery drones, where they deliver their packages using drones. In 2020, in particular, drones have also been utilized in the fight against the pandemic, and they came in quite handy. Actually, a new term arose in 2020 called pandemic drones, which are basically drones used to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. They have been used to spray disinfectants in parks. They have been used for making announcements in streets. They've also been used to send medical supplies to patients, hospitals, and areas which are difficult to access. And also, they have also been drones equipped with thermal cameras have also been used to take temperatures of people. All these have been used because people are trying to exercise to keep their distance because of the because the virus is quite contagious. And in this picture, you can see a drone being utilized, a drone that has been deployed to deployed to detect fever and also enforce social distancing. Therefore, in 2020, drones have played a key role in the fight against the coronavirus. And in the future, drones are also have also been projected to be utilized in different areas. For instance, taxi drones are one of the main area which will be where drones will be utilized. And specifically, a few weeks ago, actually last week, General Motors entered into the race of trying to develop. They developed a prototype of a taxi drone, where it's 90 kilowatt battery-powered personal aircraft. So taxi drones are one of the areas where drones will be applied in the future. Some other major companies which have also hinted on investing in this particular area are Hyundai and Aston Martin as well. Therefore, this shows that drone technology is actually a multi-billion-dollar industry. Other areas where drones will be applied in the future are base stations. They will probably be used as base station for 5G access, 6G access. This is just to provide better coverage for wireless technology. So why have drones become very popular, or why are industries looking to invest in drones? This is because drones have many merits, including low cost, safety, expandability, lightweight, and their ability to execute tasks in a very short time. Therefore, we have realized this. We have realized this. The ability of drones, and we're going to exploit it in providing exploit their benefit to provide a fast responder UAV system for a critical situation management, or in other words, an Auto-FRD system. So why do we need an Auto-FRD system? Looking at the World Health Organization stated that in 2014 we had 54% of the world's population living in urban cities. This came from only 34% in 1960. It has also stated that it is expecting that between 2020 and 2025, this population is going to grow by 1.63%. And between 2025 and 2030, the population in urban development and urban areas is going to grow by 1.44%. The United Nations also collaborates that and says that 55% of the world population are currently living in urban areas. And by 2050, we're going to have 68% of the entire world population living in urban developments. Therefore, this is going to pose so many challenges, challenges such as insecurity, such as high traffic, poor air qualities, waste management or waste disposal problems, and other challenges. So these crowded areas crowded cities will experience this and more challenges. Therefore, this Auto-FRD system will reduce the response time to critical situation, and therefore will help us in a crowded populated city, and therefore will help us to save lives as well as property. So let me just give you a short survey that has been done. This shows the police response time to priority 911 calls in the United States. As you can see, this is some of the top 10 cities in America. The shortest response time, police response time to a critical situation, to a priority 911 call, where priority 911 calls are basically life and death situation calls. And the minimum time for the police to arrive to an area is 5.46 minutes. And the average, we looking at this top 10 cities, is 7.39 minutes. This is in the United States, which is a first world country. In the second and the third world countries, we expect that this response time is definitely going to be much higher. So areas where Auto-FRD can be used in significantly reducing this response time. Some areas where this Auto-FRD system could have been used includes terror attacks, for instance, those that happened in Kenya and New Zealand and other parts of the world. Fire accidents like the fires that ravaged Australia last year and US as well. This system can also be used in responding to explosions as well as for gas explosions as well as chemical plant explosions. So the motivation behind this Auto-FRD system basically is that there is a really high demand for better and faster critical situation management system. Therefore, this proposed UAV system will meet those demands. So some related works that have been done, which are close to the proposed system, include drones that have been used in search and rescue, in collapsed buildings to search for survivors. Also, drones have been used in chemical plants. They've also been used in medical to deliver urgently needed medical equipment and drugs in areas which are hard to access. They've also been used in accident scene mapping, basically to get a complete look of an accident that has already occurred. So just to give you the novelty or how this particular drone paradigm is viewed in general, this basically shows basically two critical situations that has happened. In the middle, you can see we have a motor accident that has happened, and on top of it, you can see drones hovering above it, probably providing the necessary equipments or the necessary first aids. And also on your right, you can see that there is a house on fire, and drones as well providing services such as, for example, dropping fire extinguisher balls to suppress the fire before it gets much bigger, or basically providing information of where the someone is trapped on a particular side of the building. Therefore, we need to save that person fast. And basically, the sensors are installed in streets, and such that when they are able to see this kind of, they're able to observe this kind of accident or critical situation, they immediately send signal to the drones, which will arrive there within minutes or seconds. So this system model is made up of three major areas: the intelligent drones, the control center, and the smart sensors. Basically, so the smart sensors will sense a distress signal and send the GPS signals of the precise location to the drones. Upon receiving the GPS signals, the drones basically fly directly to the site and send live data to the control center, who receive the live data from the drones, and they can also control the drones and also coordinate, like, for instance, rescue services with authorities. So this model is implemented using LoRa technology, which is basically a system, a communication system with around 5 kilometers range in urban developments, and that around 30 kilometers a communication range in rural areas. This system uses free and unlicensed frequency. In Europe, for instance, it uses around 868 megahertz. In North America, it's 915 megahertz, and in Asia, it uses 433 megahertz. We also implement this system using ESP32 and RMF95 modules, which are cheap and they use low power, and they're also compact in size, and they are also low. They also have low complexities. These are very desired qualities for, especially for the Internet of Things application. So this is the simulation circuit diagram for the transmitter. As you can see here, we have the GPS module. This transmitter is installed in the sensors. And here you can see the simulation circuit diagram for our receiver, which is installed in the drone. And here you can see the practical circuit implementation where we actually implemented those previous two circuits. On the left here, you can see this is the transmitter, which is put on the sensors. And this is the receiver, which is basically implemented on the drone. So we implemented these two transmitters and receivers, and we tested them. We put them in different locations to test how the communication system works, basically. At this location, we chose them according to line of sight. For instance, location A, we chose it because we had line of sight. We chose location B because it's one of the most dynamic, has the most dynamic environment. And we also chose location D because of the non-line of sight as well as the distance. So after taking this, we measured the packet delivery rate, for instance, for all the locations. And as you can see, that location A, where we have line of sight, is where we get the highest packet delivery rate, almost 100% packet delivery. And location E, which is the farthest distance, we get the lowest packet delivery, but we also get above 50% packet delivery using this LoRa system. We also tested the relative signal strength for the line of sight and the non-line of sight. And as we can observe here, that we have a better signal strength when we have line of sight. So now we did a case study for comparative results. We did a case study for the city of Istanbul with a size of 5,000, which has a size of 5,343 kilometers square, and with a population of about 15 million people. We did this case study by considering, for instance, a common response to a fire accident by the fire trucks. We took parameters, we considered parameters such as the traffic, the time of the day and the traffic in Istanbul, the speed of the fire truck, as well as the readiness and the distance covered. And as we can observe, this Auto-FRD system performs significantly better than the conventional fire truck system that is being used in Istanbul, by significantly reducing the response time to a fire accident. We also looked at some other metrics and compared this particular system with other metrics used, for instance, by like, for example, used to reduce the response time to a critical situation, for instance, by the police and by other drone systems. We compared metrics such as the cost, the response time, reliability, as well as accuracy. And as we can observe, we can see that the Auto-FRD system performs significantly better than all these other method to reduce the response time. So for the achieved results, we have seen that the Auto-FRD system will be able to, with a drone, for instance, which has 32 meters per second speed, it's able to get to a place 5 kilometers away in only under less than 3 minutes. This system can also be used to save life in that the takeoff is automatically, and it automatically takes off and arrives to a particular location and providing the much needed services within no time. They can also be used to deliver services such as, for instance, fire extinguisher balls and urgently needed medical equipments. All this can be achieved at an extremely low cost compared to conventional system. a conventional method used to decrease the police response time. So now we look at the novel wireless communication technique used for Auto-FRD, because basically we need to have a secure communication system. In implementing drone technology, security is one of the biggest concerns to developers, because you will want to have a secure drone paradigm, because you don't want the information that is being collected by the drones or any hacker to take over your drones, because it's going to lead to it's not going to be good. The information is too much sensitive. Therefore, security is one of the major concerns in developing drone technologies. And to do that, we look at non-orthogonal multiple axis communication technique. Why non-orthogonal multiple axis? Because it is one of the most promising communication technique for the future. And why NOMA is considered better for, or is considered as a promising technique for future communication, is because it's of its ability to serve many users than available resources. This part is essentially important because of the high number of devices, especially in this era of Internet of Things, because the resources will be limited while the number of devices will be higher. So NOMA is also good because it provides high spectral efficiency, it has low latency, it has improved coverage, as well as massive connectivity. And all these are important qualities for Internet of Things and 5G plus era. So just to give you a brief overview on how NOMA operates, it operates by basically superimposing user data. For instance, user 1 and user 2 are given different are allocated different power levels and superimposed, and then they are transmitted. The first user who receives the signal first of all decodes the signal of user 2, and then takes the entire signal that has been received, subtracts the signal of user 2, and then it's able to decode its own signal. This is called a signal interference cancellation technique. And for the second user simply receives its signal and considers the signal of the first user as noise. So this is how power domain NOMA basically work. And also, but there are some few main challenges in NOMA, in conventional NOMA. For instance, security, internal and external eavesdropping, because the first user completely decodes the signal of the second user. Also, there is a BR degradation. Why? Because the second user simply considers the signal of the first user as noise. Therefore, this leads to a degraded bit error rate. Also, power domain NOMA has recently been dropped by 3GPP as a work item because of some performance degradation issues. And we also look at the security. For instance, cryptography and physical layer security are some of the two major techniques used to secure information. In cryptography, it requires basically key sharing techniques where we have private and public key sharing. But this is not a very good system, a good way of securing information, because of, for instance, the emergence of supercomputers, which are able to acquire these private and public keys very easily. And physical layer security, on the other hand, does not require any key sharing. In fact, it uses the noise, the channel randomness, as well as interference to securely secure the user data. It also has no processing at the receiver. Requires no processing at the receiver. So, looking at looking at NOMA and the communication and the security techniques as well, we came up with a new communication technique where we simply, with a new non-orthogonal transmission communication technique with enhanced physical layer security against internal and external eavesdroppers that can be used in, for instance, drone communication to safely communicate with, to safely implement communication system of our drone technology. So just to give you an overview of how this novel advanced novel normal technique using physical security works. Here we have two users, and we have two antennas trying to communicate to two antennas that we basically employ a dual antenna at the transmitter, trying to communicate to two users in the presence of an eavesdropper. So what we do is we do this in rounds, where in the first antenna, in the first round, we have antenna 1 active and antenna 2 is inactive. And in the second round, we have antenna 2 active and antenna 1 inactive. So what we do is we calculate an R signal, basically we call it an auxiliary signal. We calculate it based on the channel between the transmitter and the receiver, basically. And then we superimpose it with user 1 data plus user 2 data, and we transport it in, like for example, in round 1 transmission in the first round. And in the second round, we calculate again another auxiliary signal based on the channel between the transmitter and receiver, and transmit it in the second round with superimposed on user 2 and user 1 data. So the novelty of this communication paradigm basically is providing physical layer security against external eavesdropper, providing physical layer security against internal eavesdropper, and also eliminating signal interference cancellation, which also leads to reduced complexity at the receiver. We also introduced two-round transmission, and we also the simple auxiliary signal superposition are also used, and which are simple for Internet of Things devices. So how do we implement this wireless novel wireless communication technique? At receiver 1, at transmitter 1, for example, we have user 1 data here as x1 plus user 2 data plus the auxiliary signal calculated from the channel between the receivers and transmitters. And then on the second round, we transmit this signal again, which is user 2 plus user 1 data plus user 2 data plus an auxiliary signal. And now we consider the total received signal at user 1. The total received signal at user 1, or basically the first drone, is considering the transmitted signal at round 1, which is calculated as Y11, and the signal transmitted at round 2, which is here considered as Y12. Then we sum both of them like this, and upon expanding this equation, we get this one as the total received signal at user 1, or drone, the first drone. And then we also calculate the total received signal at user 2 by considering that the received signal at round 1 or at user 2, and during round 2 the signal received at user 2 during round 2. We sum them up like this, and upon expanding this equation, we get this Y2 as a total received signal at user 2. Also, we have the total received signal at the eavesdropper. This Y31 as the total received signal at the received signal during round 1, and Y32 as the received signal during round 2. And the total received signal at eavesdropper is basically this signal here. So now we calculate our R1 and R2 by considering this is the total received signal at user 1. During the, after round 1 and round 2, we get this as the total received signal at round 1 at user 1. Looking at this equation, we realize that this first part is the desired part for user 1. Therefore, and this other part are undesired part or interference. Therefore, the work of R1 and R2 is to make sure that all this part goes to 0, and we equate it to 0 like this. And also we look at the equation, the total received signal at user 2. Looking at the received signal at user 2, we see that the desired part is simply this second part here, and the rest of the part are interference or the undesired part. Therefore, we use R1 and R2 again to make sure that this part is equal to 0. So now that we have two equations, this equation and this one, and two unknowns, R1 and R2, we equate both of them, and we are able to get R1 and R2 R1 and R2, which will be basically superimposed during the first and the second transmission. Also, looking at the received signal by Eve, we can say that for Eve, Eve is desiring to receive the signal of user 1 and also to receive the signal of user 2. However, it's extremely difficult for Eve to cancel the interference that it gets from user 1 and user 2, as well as R1 and R2, therefore making it impossible for Eve to get any of the information for user 1 and user 2. So now looking at the results, analyzing the security of the system, here we have the bit. We look at the bit error rate for the two users of using our proposed communication technique. And as we can see, we observe that the proposed model has better bit error rate than even the conventional powered domain normer near and far user. And also we can observe that the BAR for internal eavesdropper, for instance here user 1 trying to listen to information of user 2 is completely zero. The bit error rate is completely zero. And here you can also see that user 2 trying to listen to information of user 1 is also completely zero. And unlike conventional normal where we had the first user being able to get information of the second user. We also analyze the peak to average power ratio of our communication technique. And as we can see, we observe that our proposed model basically has better peak to average power ratio. And good peak to average power ratio leads to better spectral and energy efficiency. And it also solves one of the major problems experienced by OFDM systems. We also check the throughput of our proposed system and compare it with single input, single output system and single input, single output system, utilizing dual antennas. And as we can observe, we observe that the proposed model, user 1, user 2 performs better, has better throughput at lower SNR. We can also observe that Eve has completely bad SNR. Internal and external eavesdroppers have completely bad bit error rate or throughput. So now we test the robustness of our system by simply by looking at how it performs when we have an imperfect channel. Why do we do this? Because our communication system basically is, in practice, it is not perfect. Therefore, we test on how our system will perform when we have an imperfect channel. We do this by simply injecting independent additive white Gaussian noise. And as we can see, as our imperfect channel become more imperfect, or as we increase the imperfectness of our channel, so does the bit error, the degradation of our bit error rate. So does the bit error rate that we experience degrades. But we can see that even with an imperfect channel, our system still perform better than conventional far normal and conventional far normal user and near normal user. However, we have algorithms that can be used in order to increase channel estimation and hence avoid this imperfect channel experience. So now we look at the optimal drone placement problem. So why do we need to consider this problem? Because right now we have even now we have larger cities, and once you have this particular system all set up, your main question now will be, where are you going to put these drones so that they will be able to serve an entire city? Even in the future, we're going to have mega cities which are going to be much bigger than currently available cities. Therefore, we need to find an optimal positions as well as optimal number of drones, considering the constraints, because the drones have constraints such as coverage. They have limited coverage. They also have limited power, as well as communication range. Therefore, we need to do that to make sure, we need to consider those constraints to make sure that the UAVs are able to cover a given area or a given city with those minimum resources. And therefore, this also helps us to lower the cost of implementing this particular system. So by doing that, we utilized two meta-heuristic algorithms, simulated annealing and genetic algorithm. So what we did is, given an area, for instance, like a smart city, for example, we divided into a number of squares depending on the coverage properties of our drones, and then we say that, for example, if this place, we indicate the presence or the absence of a drone by a 0 or a 1, and then we use basically simulated annealing and genetic algorithm to try and find an optimal placement and an optimal number of drones that will be able to cover this whole city given the constraints of the drones. So after doing that, utilizing those two meta-heuristic algorithm, we realized that simulated annealing, for instance, can easily get stuck to a local or optimal value. Therefore, using simulated annealing, it's very easy for you not to get an optimal value but get a local optimal value. We also realize that it takes a long time for simulated annealing to converge towards an optimal solution. On the other hand, we found that using genetic algorithm is much more better, because you'll get higher probability to get a global optimum value using genetic algorithm. So some of the challenges that we face when using this particular system, for instance, GPS are not very reliable because they are affected by weather elements such as rain or cloudy weather. They are also blocked by trees, and they can also be blocked by buildings. However, we can use a network of satellites that are able to connect to the GPS signal, and also we can also use other technologies such as optical flow in order to get a precise location of a critical situation. Also, we have another challenge, which is loss of packet. As we saw, that there is a chance that we are not able to get all the packets. They are affected by non-line of sight, for instance, as well as distance. We can solve this by using MIMO systems to increase basically the paths, and this will help us to increase the packet delivery rate. So to conclude and to give you future works, we have seen that the Auto-FRD system is a novel idea that can save lives as well as property by significantly reducing the response time compared to conventional systems. Also, we've seen that the system is low cost as well as secure. We see that we also come up with a secure, resilient, and effective, as well as low complexity wireless communication scheme, which uses physical layer security to provide zero information leakage for internal and external eavesdropping. And we also saw that the simulation results also indicated that the system is actually secure with low complexity, which is very good for Internet of Things. And it's also better than conventional normal techniques. We've also seen that we have addressed the optimal position problem, which further helps us to reduce the cost of implementing the system. So in the future, we would like to come up with a more system that, for instance, a system that uses more than 2 users, for instance, for the case of the wireless communication technique. And we will also like to have a bigger network of the Auto-FRD system, which will be able to also provide more emergency services. The codes that we've used for doing this can be found at researchstore.com. And this work has actually has indirectly or directly led to publication of a couple of journal papers, conference papers, book chapters, as well as patents in journals such as IEEE Access, IEEE Explorer, Springer, RS Open Journal, and Elsevier. And we have also expectations that we expect that this system will set a foundation or a blueprint for a better or a more sophisticated drone paradigm that is able to accomplish this particular, reduce the response time significantly. And we also expect that the wireless technology will not only be implemented in the drone system, but also in other applications such as Internet of Things devices and so forth. So that was my presentation. Thank you for listening. I will take any questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Joel, for the presentation. Now we can start taking questions from the jury members. So starting from Dr. Omid Hoja, the external jury member. So he can now ask you any questions he has on the presentation or in your thesis work.
Thank you very much. It's a really nice presentation. I think you have done remarkably well, as we can see from the publications, book chapters, and many other things. It's really good work. One question that I can ask is, for the optimal drone placement, you compared a couple of algorithms, genetic algorithms, and the other one was simulated annealing, I guess.
Yes.
For these experiments, did you consider some obstacles, or how did you do these experiments?